Her name does not matter yet. What matters is the night everything changed. She was an ordinary young woman, the kind of person history never bothers to write down, working a quiet job most people forget exists. Studying the science of how food survives long enough to feed people who need it, she had no idea that knowledge would one day save an army. The accident was small and strange, the kind of thing that should not have mattered. A flash, a fall, a moment of darkness, and then she opened her eyes to a sky that did not belong to her century. She woke up in a camp on the edge of collapse. Tents stretched in uneven rows, thin with weak. Soldiers moved like men who had not eaten a full meal in weeks, and everywhere the smell of rot. The granaries, the stores of food that were supposed to carry this army and the villages around it through the coming season, had turned. Grain that should have been gold and dry was dark, damp, and crawling with mold. A blight no one understood had taken hold, and no one in this world had the knowledge to stop it. She was found half buried in the dirt near the grain stores, dressed in clothes no one recognized, speaking with an accent no one could place. In a camp already starving and afraid, a stranger appearing out of nowhere was not seen as luck. It was seen as an omen, and omens in a desperate camp are rarely treated kindly. She was dragged before the officer in charge of the camp's stores, a hard, tired man with no patience left for mysteries. In this world, a starving camp does not waste food or mercy on an outsider who cannot explain herself. The sentence came fast. She would be cast out beyond the camp walls, left to the cold and whatever waited in the dark. One less mouth to feed, in a camp already counting its final days of rations. This was supposed to be the end of her story before it began. A tragic, forgotten fate, the kind that never gets remembered. Before they could carry out the sentence, she said the only thing she had left. She did not beg. She made an offer. "Give me 3 days with what remains of the grain, and I will show you how to save what is left and how to stop the rot from spreading to the rest." The officer had nothing to lose from a condemned stranger's last request. 3 days, he said. If nothing changes, the sentence stands. What she knew was not magic. It was simple, forgotten common sense from a world centuries ahead. Grain rots fastest when it is damp and packed too tightly, with no air moving through it. She had the soldiers spread what could still be saved thin across dry cloth in the sun, turning it by hand through the day to pull the moisture out before the mold could spread further. She had them separate the blighted grain completely, burning what could not be saved instead of storing it near anything healthy. A simple act that stopped the rot from spreading any further. She showed them how to raise the storage floor off the damp earth using stone and wood, so air could move underneath instead of trapping moisture against the grain sacks. None of it was glamorous. None of it looked like magic. It looked like patience, and it worked. By the 3rd day, the surviving grain was dry, clean, and safe. Not everything could be saved, but enough was rescued to carry the camp and the villages. Depending on it, through the season that had, only days earlier, looked certain to end in famine. The officer walked the storage tents himself, running grain through his fingers, waiting to find the rot he was certain would still be there. He did not find it. For the first time since she had arrived, no one moved to drag her anywhere. Word of what happened in the storage tents did not stay small for long. It reached the general, commanding the wider army, a man who had watched famine break stronger forces than his own from the inside, long before any enemy did. He did not summon her out of gratitude alone. He summoned her because a starving army is a defeated army, no matter how many swords it carries, and he had just watched a stranger solve the one problem his own advisors, could not. She stood before him with nothing but the same quiet knowledge that had already saved one camp, and answered every question he asked without flinching. The general did not simply spare her. He gave her a role no outsider in that world was ever expected to hold, placing the food security of his entire army under her guidance, a position most soldiers spent decades earning. The woman who had woken up condemned, 3 days from being cast into the cold, with no name and no future, was now the reason an entire army would eat through the season ahead. An entire army would eat through the season ahead. Her old fate, the forgotten, tragic ending written for a nameless stranger, never happened. In its place, a new one began, built not on luck, but on knowledge nobody else in that world possessed, and a courage to offer it when she had nothing left to bargain with but 3 days and a handful of grain. Whether or not you believe a person could ever truly wake up in another century, the heart of this story is not really about time travel at all. It is about what happens when someone refuses to be defined by the fate they were handed and finds one skill, one piece of knowledge that turns a condemned ending into a beginning nobody saw coming. That is the story tonight. Thank you for listening.